Welcome back, guys. So in this video we'll be talking about the while loop and what is the correct syntax of the while loop, and then if you can see we'll see if we can just make that while loop in a single line. Okay, so what are the while loops? Why Python have like two primitive loop commands. Okay, so there is like while loop and for loop. In the other videos we'll be talking about the for loop, but for this one we'll be talking about the while loop. Okay, so with the while loop, we can execute a set of statements as long as the condition is true. So let's just see an example. So print I as long as I is less than 6. So I want to like show I to the screen if it's like less than 6, okay, every time. So I've just initialized a variable here, I equals to 1. Then I have initialized a word while, which is for the while loop, and then I initialize my condition, which is I is less than 6. Okay, then the colon sign, and then that same indentation thing. You can see that indentation, okay, indentations. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here, so I want to show I to the screen, but also every time I'm just showing that thing to the screen, just do one thing, add 1 to the previous value of I. So that is same as like if I was like 1, so after writing like 1 plus 1, that would be like 2. So the next 2 plus 1 equals to 3. So that is how I'm like incrementing 1 every time. So you can do this way also, or yes, you can say that like I equals to whatever I was previously, just add 1 to it. So the new I would be an incremented I now. Okay, and the syntax of the short way of doing that is like I plus equals to 1. Okay, so that is how I'm like incrementing it. And in different languages we use that I plus plus thing or I minus minus thing. There are like ton of other ways too, you can use them too, but this is how we normally use to increment. Let's just say if I want to add 2 every time, so I would be writing I plus equals to 2. So that would mean like I equals to I plus 2. Okay, so every time this while is like executing, it is like saying, looking at the condition. So first of all, I was like 1. Let me just remove that whole part. Okay, and we'll see you how the statements are like really executing. So the output of the code would be like, output would be, so if I is less than 6, yeah it is, so print I. So I is like 1. Okay, add 1 to it. Okay, so I is now 2. So if it's 6, if it's still less than 6, okay, yeah it is, so print I. So it is now 2. Again less than 6, yeah it is, again, and when I gets 6, so the while condition gets false, and we just get out of this whole while condition. Okay, so the program stops execution. Okay, we'll be practicing this thing in the compiler too, but let's just go over some different whiles situations. Okay, and we'll practice that part too. Okay, or just leave it for now. Let's just try to run that part of the code. Okay, so what we are doing, so let me just zoom out the screen a bit. Okay, so now I'm just adding a new cell of the code, and now I have to add a text part to it, and what I have to write it like while loops. Okay, and now coming here, so a equals to 5 while a is greater than 2, print a to me. Okay, and every time what you have to do is like minus equals to 1. Okay, so what I'm just doing here is like I'm trying to decrement a every time, and then if it's like smaller than 2, then my program just stop execution. Okay, so let's see how many values we have. So a was like 5, and then a was like 4, and then 3. The other iteration when a was like 2, while loop just stop execution. Okay, we'll be practicing this thing in our further session too, but let's just go over the while structure another more. Okay, so remember the increment I, or else the loop will continue forever. Okay, we have to be really sure about that. If I'm like making a really false condition here, let's just say if I'm like writing here like a is greater than, let's just say if I'm writing here that if a is like less than 100, so this program will be executing forever because I'm like decrementing from a now, and the program will not never stops running. Okay, you can see that. So we don't really do that kind of stuff because in our situation the compiler, our local machines get stuck. So you have to be really sure about these executions. Okay, so I just stopped the execution now, and it will still take a little bit time for interrupting the execution. Okay, so now that, so you have to be really sure about what statements are you writing here. Okay, for the current part, the problem that we did was like this thing. Okay, and let's just say if I just forgot to add the incrementation, let's just comment this thing out, and the short key of the commenting is control/. Okay, now I'm running it, so I'm not incrementing. It's every time the loop is executing, a is still 1. Okay, so you have to be really sure about what conditions you are writing here. Okay, so your machine won't get stuck here. Okay, so you have to be like really sure that what things are you incrementing. Okay, so the while loop relevant variables to be ready in the example, we need to define an exact indexing variable. So we define I. In the current example we define a. Okay, and set it to 1. Okay, so we also use break statement to inside the while, and we provide some specific conditions to where to put the break thing. Okay, so let's just say I was equals to 1. If it's smaller than 6, print this thing, and if it's get equals to 3, then do the break thing and just do that thing. Okay, or else if it's not, then increment it. Okay, so that is where we are just putting a break on our program. Let me just put the break right here too. So I'm just like writing if a double equals to 5, let's just say, let me just use 2. Okay, so do the break thing. Okay, or else just increment it. Okay, and you have to be really sure about the indexes. Okay, if I'm let's just say if I'm like doing incrementing a before the if statement. Okay, so let's just see both of the results here. Okay, so a is like 1 and 2. Okay, and if I'm like incrementing it before testing the if condition, so that would be a is also. Okay, because I have never tested the initial default a. Okay, and I'm just getting the a. I'm getting the first one, and in the second one, when a is like printed to the screen, then I've just added that it, and the if conditions get true, and I'll just breaking it. Okay, let's just say if I'm like writing here 5, I'm writing here 5, so you can see the difference here. So 1 2 3 4. Okay, and we never got 5 because I've incremented that previously. And if I'm just putting that part here, running it, now I will get 5 too, because 5 is the point where we get the break. Okay, and we can simply like print anything before it. I'm just writing like woohoo, we reached to 5. Okay, and then below that I'm just putting a break here. Now we'll be getting a message also. So woohoo, we reached to 5. Okay, so that these are the different ways by which we normally use to create our file statements. Okay, so we provide some specific breaks too, because we don't want a program to run like forever. Okay, so there is also a new thing. If we want to like see a particular condition and then we just want a program to continue processing. Okay, so the continue is a word which we use for our programs to continue the processing. So let's just say if I'm writing here continue instead of the break. Okay, so what I would be getting, I would be getting the program execution till then. Let me just change this condition to so 3. Now if I'm running this thing, so I will be executing the whole program. I will be, oh, I forgot to add the increment. Oh, okay. So what I accidentally did was I told the program to continue doing. Okay, let me just do that thing. Okay, now let's just run this program, and you can see that what I'm getting the message here is that is equal to 3, and what I'm trying to save the program, if that gets equal to 3, then continue it. So what is inside the continue is the print statement. Okay, so you have to be really careful about these things too. Okay, so the best way would be to use that particular structure with the proper precaution. So right here, we have to like place the increment part correctly. Okay, because whenever we are like doing the continue statements, so what we are saying to the program to continue which was being done before. So in our program what we had was a print statement before. Okay, so you have to be placing these two statements really carefully. Let's just say if I'm like saying that print this thing, okay, increment 1 to the program and print a. Okay, so what this program will be doing now, that will be executing the previous code whenever the if statement is true. Okay, but the previous statement is like changing it, so in the next iteration this gets false, the if statement gets false. Okay, so these are like really some of the tiny things that you have to keep in mind in order to work on these while loops properly. Okay, because the continue is like telling the program to do the previous thing that you are doing. Okay, and we are not really going towards the further part. Okay, and again I'm telling you guys that be really careful about that else thing, that indentation thing, because you would be like getting so much errors. Okay, so let's just do the else statement now. Okay, so I is initialized, while is given, print this thing, increment this thing. Okay, and if the whiles get false, if this whole thing get false, then do this thing. Okay, so what does that mean? That means is else part. Okay, so when the while get false, you will get that message which is in the else part. Okay, so you guys really have to be really careful about where to put the statements. Okay, and how does the continue and break statements work. Okay, now let's just move towards our exercise part. Okay, so in the first question we'll be writing like print I as long as I is less than 6. So what should be placed here, and you have to be like really sure about what are the indentations too. Okay, now let's just move towards the second question. The second question says stop the loop if I is equal to 3. So what should be written here, okay, inside that if statement. Okay, and would there be any indentations too or not? Then the third question says when I is 3, jump directly to the next iteration. Okay, so what would be written here? Okay, we have learn about that thing too. And the last question says print the message once the condition is false. So what should be written here if the while get false? Okay, and that's all from this class. Thank you so much. Bye.